Reaction continues to grow surrounding New York's migrant situation following the expiration of Title 42, as thousands of new migrants are arriving. Details on the legal battle to house them. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray here in Albany. Some are calling it a migrant crisis as New York continues to receive immigrants from the southern border. New York City Mayor Erica Adams proposing sending migrants to counties outside of New York City, claiming the Big Apple is at capacity. In response, multiple counties around the state declaring states of emergency to keep it from taking on these new migrants. Governor Hochul also responding, expanding funding to help migrants who come here to New York State. Other lawmakers are proposing legislation that would prevent vulnerable communities like veterans or maybe victims of domestic violence from being displaced from where they are to make room for these new arrivals.
Here's the sort of the truth that no one ever talks about. Someone's always got to be displaced. When you're bringing in thousands, millions, I don't even know how many it is, tens of thousands of illegal migrants, and you're putting them in different communities, you're putting them in hotels, you're displacing others. You're taking resources from others. There's no two ways about it.
Joining us now is Sienna Freeman-Tolbert. She's an immigration law expert and lawyer with Whiteman, Osterman, and Hanna. Sienna, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here, John.
Busy time for an immigration lawyer right now, with everything
Yes.
happening in the country. First of all, let's get into a little bit of your background. Are you solely immigration law? And what kind of things do you do? Helping people get in the country, stay in the country, work out work visas? What kind of things do you do?
So I'm solely immigration law. What we do is we do employment-based immigration, so helping employers bring individuals into the U.S. to work. We do removal-based, so when someone is in immigration court, we assist them as well. And we also do family-based. So those are what you hear about, fiance visas, people that get married to U.S. citizens, so they can apply to remain in the U.S. permanently as well.
How does anything like this get? I would think most immigrants would not have a ton of money for lawyers. Is there a program that you work through that helps them get this legal representation, or is this just something where it's straight?
You'd be surprised. Most foreign nationals in the country, they save their money before they come to the U.S., or it's an investment for them because they know they're making this big change.
Sure.
And so most of them, it's raising money and coming to the U.S. with those funds to retain an attorney and to pursue their opportunity to live in the U.S.
So much of immigration, I think, is misunderstood, where people think it's one or it's like binary, like you're either here legally or you're here illegally, and that's it. There's a lot of complexity to it, isn't there? In terms
There is. There's individuals that come to study, like student visas. There's individuals that come to work, and then you have individuals who coming up from the southern border who have pending asylum applications. And what's happening is they apply for asylum, and now they're waiting for their day in court to go in front of a judge and to make their argument. And during that period of time, which can be anywhere from 2 to 5 years sometimes in some courts, then people have a work permit and they're allowed to work legally here in the U.S.
I'm just saying, can they get on the books and work? And I know it's a big issue because if you're working and paying taxes, yet you don't have representation. You're not voting and things like that. True?
That is correct. They do not have the right to vote or anything like that, but they do have the right to certain asylum seekers have the right to certain public funded medical care because they're seeking asylum. But most of them, they work, they find a job with their work permit, and they fund everything here on their own.
With what's happening right now at the southern border, and now it's coming to the rest of the country, it seems, on buses literally, and here in New York State. What's a solution to all this right now? Because it seems very complicated. It seems like there's a lot of politics involved in it.
You know, and what people need to understand is this is short-term problems in terms of what's happening right now, because most of the individuals that come from the border, they were released by the federal government. And so now they have court dates and they're waiting to apply for their work permits so they can work and then they can buy their own housing. So what we're trying to prevent, what you're seeing happening in New York City, you hear discussing in Rensselaer County and around the Albany area, is what do we do with these individuals that do not have any income at this time, right? And I think there's a lot that the federal government could do. They could accelerate the work permit process so individuals who are waiting for their asylum case can get their work permit faster and start working and providing for themselves and their family, because that's all they want. I would say easily 80% of the client cases, people that come to my office asking for help, the first question they ask, how can I get a work permit? how can I get a work permit? Because they all want to work. And they are allowed to get a work permit through the asylum process, but it takes a while. It takes anywhere from 6 to 9 months to receive that document once they apply. So that can be hard. So what you're asking them to do is to come into the US, apply for asylum on their own, which most of the time they have to find a nonprofit organization or an attorney to help them apply for asylum. And then once they apply for asylum, they wait 6 months and then they're allowed to apply for a work permit. And then you see these individuals contributing to the US economy more. You see them opening their own businesses. So I see this as a short-term problem that the federal government needs to get ahead of, no question, to see how they can deal with this gap. Because once they have that work permit, they can become an asset to all of these communities, especially upstate New York.
It seems like there's a lot of bad, when listening to you, a lot of bad information out there too, where people, especially people my age, will say, well, my great-grandparents came from Italy or Ireland. They did it the right way. They are trying to do it the right way, right? They're seeking asylum.
They are legally allowed to seek asylum. So they are trying to do it the right way, and they are trying to apply, because a lot of employers are not going to allow someone to work without authorization, right? So they know that, and they want to see what are their legal avenues, what do we have to do to get a work permit. And it all goes back to the system we have in place right now is flawed, right? There's a lot of delays, there's a lot of backlogs, but what they really need is to get those work permits faster so that they can begin working, and so our society doesn't feel such a burden, housing them while they're waiting.
Are things different for someone coming here if they have some family already here? Are they treated any differently in terms of their rights, or is it all kind of fall under the same umbrella?
So interesting enough, the Biden administration started a new policy where if you have family here, you can apply before they even leave the country. So from Nicaragua, Venezuela, those places, they can apply from those places to come into the country, and then they come in automatically, and they can start work. They can apply for a work permit, and they can start working right away. So we are seeing the administration input some policies so we can deal with some of these issues, but it's very hard to communicate that to the people in places like Nicaragua, Haiti, Cuba, where they're running for their lives, to say, hey, just wait and apply. So that's the disconnect.
Where does the politics come in all that? It's got to be difficult for someone. You're looking at the law, but you've got politicians on both sides. Sometimes it feels like such a wedge issue, they don't want to let it go.
It does, because we were looking at what was happening. We were seeing the emergency orders come out of some of the counties in upstate New York, such as Rensselaer County. And to me, it reminded me of back during the prior administration when Rensselaer County did have a contract, and they might still, with ICE to detain individuals in the county jail. So it seemed, I was like, wait 1 second. So we will allow detention of the immigrants, but we won't allow the hotels and other places to have contracts to house immigrants if they have the space to do so, because they're going to make money from that if the federal government or the New York State government gives them money to do that.
Last minute of this, does a lot of this end up in court, do you think, with the fighting between the counties and downstate and everything else?
Oh yes, it's going to end up in court. There is also new policies coming out of the Biden administration that kind of prohibits a lot of people from applying for asylum at the southern border if they did not apply in a different country on their way here. So we're going to see that in court. So there's going to be a lot of litigation around immigration. So just get ready.
So your phone's going to be ringing, I got a feeling.
It's always ringing.
Yeah, thanks for coming and talking to us about this important
John.
issue. Hope to see you again soon.
All right.
A study looking into New York's liquor laws, recommending some changes I think some of you might like. When we come back, we'll speak with a member of that commission on what changes they're recommending and what that could mean for the state's alcohol service industry. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray here in Albany. A report looking into New York's alcoholic beverage control laws has now been released. The commission behind the report recommending some changes to the current laws. That commission taking a closer look at the regulations for the alcoholic beverage control laws that are on the books. Out of 28 policies that they considered, the commission voting to recommend changes to 18 of them. The changes largely centering on deregulation, recommending changes like allowing one person to own multiple liquor stores. You can't do that now. Pushing back to opening time to 10 a.m. on Sunday, which is noon right now, and changing the criteria for getting a liquor license approved. Multiple organizations in the restaurant and alcohol service industry releasing a joint statement this week calling the current liquor laws, quote, anti-competitive and overly bureaucratic. They also urged state lawmakers to advance the 18 measures from the commission through the legislative process this year. Joining us now to break down the details of his new report is Paul Zuber, who was on that commission. Paul, thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
So let's talk about this commission. Who puts this together and who's on the commission?
It was put together by the legislature and the governor during last year's budget when there was a debate over alcohol in general. As you might remember, we ended up doing to-go drinks, where you could get drinks to go from restaurants. One of the provisions that they put in was this commission, because I think everybody realized that the alcohol and beverage control laws in New York State are quite antiquated. Some of them have not been changed since just after Prohibition.
Wow. And now, did the pandemic and how we had to restructure things because it sort of forced things to be different, did that jumpstart this a little bit and give you guys new ideas?
Yeah, you know what I think the pandemic did? I think the pandemic made people realize that some of these laws just didn't make sense anymore because, you know, from the business council's perspective, obviously we look at the economy overall and, you know, we have businesses in every sector. I think you saw the way in which consumers purchased items changed completely. I mean, how many of us used to walk into a liquor store and peruse all the different wines and everything, and now how many of us go on the internet and say, I want this wine, I'll pull up in lot A, and out comes somebody and they put it in the trunk of your car.
And off you go.
And off you go. So it's a completely different world now, and I think we really have to look at these laws because many of them actually will create economic development opportunities if we fix them.
Did the commission have to have any kind of hearings with the public, or was it more like getting a group of people together several times and just coming up with a list of things you might want to change?
Yeah, it was a group of people that we put together. There were 4 meetings, and we covered 28 items. It was a well-balanced group of people. So I think in years past it was very industry heavy. But this time there were representatives of the alcohol and beverage control industry. There was representatives from the New York distilled spirits industry, from the cider industry, us representing businesses. So it was a very broad group. And I think that helped move forward a number of the recommendations that the commission put forward.
Let's jump into those because you said some things were kind of antiquated. What were some of the ones that they took a vote and a whole bunch got recommended? Let's walk me through some of those.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's some very like in the weeds archaic ones. One that I always like to point to is there's a provision in the law that is affectionately called the Tied House Law. And the reason that it was created was you didn't want one company controlling all 3 sectors of the alcohol and beverage industry. So you didn't want a retailer also being a wholesaler, also being a manufacturer, because obviously you would create a monopolistic sort of situation. But what's happened now is there are many cases in which businesses come into New York, they want to do a huge development. They're get everything set, they get their financing set, they're about to do development, they decide they want to open, say, a restaurant as part of the development, and lo and behold, the developer turns out to own like a 2% interest in a winery in California. That type of stuff has actually happened, and the SLA their hands have been tied and they've been unable to give the person a license. Now we know with that limited amount of investment in a winery, that person isn't going to suddenly control the market.
No.
So one of the things that we talked about was allowing there be some flexibility with that provision. So that's one. I think another one that's out there, long ago, you know, when Prohibition first came about, Americans drank a lot. I mean, I can't remember the exact numbers, but when I read it, sometimes it makes me chuckle because even in my best college years, I didn't drink that much, right? So one of the things when they developed the law, they decided, well, you know what, we're only going to have one liquor store owner, because we have one liquor store owner that creates a neighborhood store. And that liquor store owner would be there to make sure that underage kids didn't come in and drink, make sure that, you know, the town, quote unquote, drunk wouldn't come in and buy alcohol. And that made sense in 1930s, right? It doesn't make sense now.
No.
There's no reason why someone shouldn't be able to own 1, 2, 3, 4, however many liquor stores they want. If they have the financing and they have the ability to do it, they should be able to do it. Just like if I wanted to have a chain of restaurants, I can have a chain of restaurants and be licensed by the SLA. Nothing prohibits me. But for some reason in the ABC law, we prohibited that for liquor store owners. So we recommended to allow a limited number of additional licenses for those individuals. And it just makes sense. I think anybody listening would say, when you say something like that, they go, well, that doesn't make sense. And we tried to attack those things. Just didn't make sense.
Right. Talk about the hours. I know, is there a recommendation to expand hours a little bit?
Yeah, there's a recommendation to expand hours for liquor stores. So several years ago, we affectionately call it the brunch bill. There was a situation where some folks went to a brunch and they tried to order a mimosa, and it was 10, 11 o'clock, and the bar and the restaurant said, I'm sorry, the law says that we can't serve you till 12. So New York changed that law. And we affectionately called it a brunch. It made total sense, right? No one should, that's half the reason you go to brunch. You know,
Sure.
you get mimosa or something like that. But they didn't change the law for liquor stores. So one of the provisions that we recommended was allowing liquor stores to open at 10 a.m. And again, when you go back to the question about COVID, that's another example of where COVID has changed our patterns, because people are doing a lot more in-home stuff. So if my wife tells me we're having company over for brunch, and you tell me that the only time I can get the champagne for the company to come over is 12 o'clock, it means that I'm scrambling to get the
Right.
champagne and running back to my house. And then, you know, as we all know, we might get in trouble because we haven't done what we're supposed to do prior
Exactly.
to that. And so, it was just a simple thing that made complete sense.
We only got about a minute left, but I want to hit two quick things. One, selling wine in supermarkets, that did not get a recommendation?
That did not get a recommendation, but what I will say is one of the only thing where I think we could have done better as a commission was to have consumers on the commission. 76% of New York State residents, according to a Siena poll, want wine and grocery stores. 40 plus states have wine and grocery stores. If there was a consumer on that commission, it probably would have been recommended. So what I would say to that is the 18 recommendations were bipartisan recommendations. They should be passed immediately by the Senate and the Assembly and signed by the governor. Wine and grocery stores should be a full discussion point for the legislature and for the governor, because the public wants it.
Yep.
And that's plain and simple. The public wants it. So we have to talk about it. We have to try to see what we can do. If 40 other states are doing it, there's no reason why New York can't.
And the walls didn't fall down there. And I think you hit my last question. You make these recommendations. SLA doesn't wave a wand and it happens. Do you need legislation to make these changes?
They need legislation to make the changes. So, you know, I think, you know, our statement, along with, you know, some of our colleagues on the commission, have been, hey, guys, you have these 18 recommendations. Every leader, including the governor, had a representative. It's been vetted. Let's pass them. Let's do them now. And then next year we can talk to, or even at the end of this year, we can talk about wine and grocery stores. We can talk about some of the other things that are out there. But these 18 recommendations, they should be moved forward immediately.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so
Next
much.
year we circle around, maybe we'll have mimosas. We'll see.
That sounds good to me.
Depending on when we tape.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Schools are turning to technology to continue educating students during the pandemic, but could it be putting students' data at risk? We'll take a closer look at a new report from the state controller. And welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. New York State Controller's Office releasing an audit of the State Education Department recently, looking into the privacy and security of student data. The findings revealing some worrying details. The audit found that over 100 incidents surveyed, 30% of the schools did not report their data breaches to the Education Department within 10 days. 73 schools did not have a parent's bill of rights for any third-party contract on the website. 52 schools didn't have a data security policy on the website. 14 did not have a data security officer at all. The Controller's Office says the Education Department is responding to this report.
The State Education Department has responded supportive of the recommendations, which is something we like to see. Obviously student data security is of the utmost importance to SED, and they take the recommendations seriously and to heart. And they have started working with this private company to start classifying data that they're responsible for.
Well, stick around. Back with a look at the week ahead in just a moment. First, though, if you got a comment, maybe a story idea, don't be shy. Let us know about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach us right on Twitter at WTEN. Finally, on Empire State Weekly, a jury finding Nauman Hussein, the operator of a limo company involved in the 2018 Schoharie limo crash, guilty on 20 counts of manslaughter. That's one for each person killed in the crash. The trial ending much faster than previously expected. Prosecution only calling 24 out of more than 100 witnesses they had on their list on standby, arguing that Hussein did not take proper responsibility maintaining the vehicle and the crash it was involved in. 20 people again dying, and the jury agreed. Hussein facing 5 to 15 years in prison. When they sentence him, that will happen May 31st, end of the month. We'll keep an eye on that trial and sentencing and bring you the analysis as it comes in. For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray in Albany. We'll see you right here next week. And hey, don't forget, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over New York State. Here's a full schedule of the weekly shows at 10 television stations all across the great state of New York.